Hi, it's Jen. Welcome to Creepy Culture. Today we're going to be talking with Steve. He is from Vancouver, Washington, and he was out camping and exploring the woods and had some really weird stuff happen to him. So I'll jump right into that and I'll see you afterwards. So, hey, Steve, welcome to Creepy Culture. Um, you live in Washington State, right?
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'm in Vancouver, Washington. It's on the southeast part of the state. It's just right above Portland, Oregon.
Okay. And you can go ahead and just tell about your Bigfooting stuff.
Well, I guess in a nutshell, I'm originally from Montana. I grew up on a farm in Montana, and then right after high school, I went in the army. I was in the army for about a little over 6 years, and then when I got out, I went to school in Spokane. I lived in Spokane, and that was when I lived in Spokane, I started getting into paranormal research. And in fact, I was actually with the first group in Spokane that had a web, had a website, had a web presence. That was back in the 90s. And then so I went to school for engineering, and I've been a drafter slash map maker for quite a few years. And then in the early 2000s, I moved over here. I was married at the time, and I have two boys, and they were kids, and we moved over here to the other side of Washington State, here toward the coast. And of course, this is Bigfoot country here. And so I kind of switched gears then from paranormal into the Bigfoot research. And that was of course, in the early 2000s. And then I didn't really pursue the Bigfoot research so much until maybe about 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. I had a weird experience up at Mount St. Helens back in it must have been about maybe 2010. And I was up in a place called Ape Cave. I wasn't actually in the cave, I was on a trail that was behind it. And I had a pretty strange experience up there where I was out in a it wasn't a clear cut, it was just a big open area. There was some volcanic rock. I used to climb around on those rock, and I was up there one time and everything got really quiet, and I smelt something really bad, and I just, for some reason, I stood there for a long time, I knew there was something in the tree line of that area. And I kind of reenact or kind of re-show that story in one of my videos. Anyhow, fast forward the clock about 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 maybe maybe a year or two or so later, I started getting involved here in missing persons. And as I was, as I said, I was a map maker before, I got involved with, I started making maps for missing person for the searches. And then must have been, yeah, it was about 5 years ago, somebody had suggested, it might be really helpful if we had drones for this. And I thought, oh yeah, that would be a good addition because people use drones for maps. And so I bought drone. I bought another drone and bought another drone, and I was integrating drones into my profession, map making. And that was augmenting what the work I was providing for law enforcement, for investigators on missing persons cases. And then it must have been about maybe 2020, I had ran across a Bigfoot research group at a restaurant one time, and I just got to BSing with them, and I had started going to, there's a lot of like Bigfoot fests and stuff like that around here. And I had been going to these Bigfoot fests and checking them all out. And this group asked me what I was talking to them about mapping. They asked me what I'd charge them to go fly an area for them once, because I guess some place where they had found some interesting stuff. And I thought, oh man, I won't charge you nothing for that. It just sounds like fun. And so I did. And then about 2 years ago, I had worked on a missing persons case in Boise, and I thought maybe what I should do is I'll put something together to make it easier for me to find online. And so that was when I started Steve Searches. And so Steve Searches is my YouTube channel. It's also my Facebook page. It originally was for missing person cases, but I started getting more Bigfoot cases coming in, and so about a year ago, I just turned it into a Bigfoot research, and so that's really what I've been doing ever since. So yeah, so then I started working with some of the other groups, and some other people, and some other groups that I was running to on social media, and I started going out myself, and yeah, that was so I've been going out solo for about a year and a half, just about 2 years now, and had quite a few weird experiences. And of course, up here where I'm at, most of the time I spend up in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, which is right next to where I live here. And it's a pretty big area. In fact, Mount St. Helens is within that national forest, and I spend a lot of time. That's really my main area of operations, is mostly the south side of Mount St. Helens.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. So I spend mostly what I do is I map areas, and I look for evidence. I look for tracks and hair and whatnot, and I set up game cams, and I end up running into a lot of weird things up there. That's pretty much the gist of it.
Yeah, Mount St. Helens and Gifford Pinchot, they're notorious for having Bigfoot sightings and stuff.
Yeah, that's a lot of people call us the Bigfoot belt,
Mm-hmm.
because here, between here and northern Oregon, so the Bigfoot belt really kind of runs down into Oregon. So I've worked with most of the time when I work with other groups, they're usually groups from Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm right on the border here anyhow. And so I've done some stuff down in the northern part of Oregon, really with other people, but usually it always turns out to be like when I'm working solo, I always end up in the Gifford Pinchot.
Mm.
But yeah, that was one of the things that got me really into the Bigfoot research, was just because it's so abundant here, and it's so accessible.
Right.
I mean, you can just walk out of your door, literally, or walk a half a block, and you'll find somebody that either saw a Bigfoot or knows somebody who saw a Bigfoot.
Oh, I bet so.
Yeah.
What's some of the stuff you've found while you've been out?
Well, for some reason, I go out and I'll find I'll find things here and there. I mean, I set up game cams and stuff, and I'll get anomalies sometimes in the photos, but they're not really. A lot of times, it seems like things find me.
Right.
But if I wasn't going out, then they wouldn't find me. So I almost kind of feel sometimes like I'm just making myself available, for weird stuff. Like I think when I first moved over here, that was I think that was in 2005. It must have been maybe a year or two after I first moved over here. I was out in this area called Nat Creek. It's right down in Oregon. It's on the way to the coast. And I was out poking around in the woods one time, and I saw this really huge bird fly off, and it was a ways away. I mean, it was probably a quarter mile away from me, and I thought, God, why that? I've never seen a bird that big before. And I didn't think about it really too much. For a couple of weeks, and I was asking people around because I just moved over here. I thought, they must just have weird stuff here. And I was telling coworkers about it, and everybody kept telling me, well, you saw a turkey hawk. So I looked online, of course, turkey hawks, and it was pretty clear that was not a turkey hawk. And people just kept saying, just kept laughing about it, and saying, well, that was just a turkey hawk. So I kind of gave that up, and then must have been about 5 years ago, I was at a Squatch Fest, and I was sitting talking to this old native guy, and I was telling about this bird. He just looked at me like I was an idiot, and he said, well, you saw a Thunderbird.
Oh, I've heard of those. I've heard of people seeing those.
Yeah, and he just looked at me like it was like I was kind of an idiot, like I didn't know what I was looking at, because to him it was obvious. And he said, well, you saw a Thunderbird. I thought,
wow.
oh, okay, that's my first. I thought maybe they just had a lot of weird wildlife here. You know what I mean?
Right, the culture shock, like me seeing a moose in Alaska and thinking it was a horse.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's just like when somebody looks at you like you're the idiot because like you should have known. And so, yeah, I know exactly what that's like.
Me too.
But yeah,
I've heard of those. I've heard of people seeing those, and everybody's like, those are a myth. But, I think the natives have those on their totem poles along with Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And I think I always thought those were real too. So,
yeah, right.
well, some of the natives do. I've seen totem poles with Thunderbirds on them, and I've seen totem poles with a Bigfoot on them. And so they're just putting like the animals that are in their area on their totem poles. So, there's that.
Sure.
They're only putting on there what they see. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that anyway, that was really my first. I think that was really my first weird experience here, and then it would have been a few years later when I had that weird experience up there by Ape Cave, where it was like I was talking about before, and everything just got silent. And of course, it doesn't sound weird on the surface when you just say, well, I was in the woods and it got silent. But up in the Gifford Pinchot, there's the woods are never silent there. There's always there's birds and squirrels and wind and water, and there's all kinds of things going on there when it turns silent. I mean, it was kind of like that silence when you get your hearing checked and they put you in that booth, and it's almost like it's totally dead in there. That's the kind of silence it was.
Yeah, and people experience that all the time, and they'll say it's like the forest put a mute button on.
Yeah, right. It's kind of like when you get things like time loss and stuff. If it was just something that was happened all the time, you wouldn't notice it. But that's what makes it stand out, is when it gets so. I'm in a room right now, it's silent in here, but it's not silent in the same way it was when I was up there.
Yeah, it just shuts off. It's just like really like a mute button. It just shuts off everything, just gets extremely quiet. I've had that happen to me several times, and a lot of people say it's because there's a predator around, everything gets quiet. But I always wonder, like, it just goes completely silent, just like a mute button, just like they say. That's exactly what happens, and it's really creepy to me.
Yeah,
it's unnerving.
Well, there could be something to it, but I don't know, because I know that it is true that when there's a predator around, most animals, they know to shut the hell up.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something different. Yeah, it's just like what you're describing too. It's not really the same thing.
Mm-mm.
I mean,
It's
it's
got a
not
feel
really.
to it. I mean, did you feel something when that happened? Because I always get a really weird feeling when that happens. It's
Yeah, it felt like time stopped.
exactly, or like you walked into some weird bubble that
Yeah,
was excluding the outside or something. It's really strange. Even the crickets stop, and
yeah,
that's crazy. The crickets, the locusts, everything just stops, and it's just silent. Where you can hear like I don't know. One thing I could hear was like air barely.
well, yeah, and see, that was the weird thing about it too, was that there wasn't like any wind or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It just stopped, and then I smelled, and then I smelled this. Like how a horse smells.
Yeah.
When you're next to it, horses have kind of their own smell to them, and that's what this kind of smelled like. The only thing I've ever smelled that smelled like a horse was camels. Camels smell like horses, only they're really strong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only thing I've ever smelled that had that same. It's kind of like a weird. I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like a pungent, or maybe said of like a salty, pungent smell to them. But
Yeah.
I smelled that when right after this period of silence up there. And so I just, it's kind of like, and when I explain it to my boys, I always tell them it's kind of like if you come home you come home in your house from work or shopping or whatever, and there's somebody in your bathroom, you know that there's somebody in your bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to see them, but you know that they're there. And kind of, this was kind of the same thing. I knew that there was something inside of that tree line that was watching me. I didn't see it, but I know that they're there.
Yeah. And that's
And
classic. That's classic
right,
for the woods to go quiet, and then for somebody to have a Bigfoot sighting. That's pretty.
right,
It's pretty normal for that to happen in a Bigfoot sighting. So there most likely probably was something in the tree line watching you when that happened.
right.
I wouldn't doubt it a bit, especially where you live, where they're prevalent all the time.
Yeah,
So,
right.
did you ever find
Yeah.
any tracks or hair or anything?
Well, see, the thing is here, when you walk through the woods here, it's because of the weather here, because of the climate here, it's real rainy here.
Hmm.
And when you walk out in the woods, and I've done this a few times too, I've shown this. I try to show this on my videos so people can get a little bit more of an understanding, because it's not the same everywhere. But here, because it rains so much, when you're walking, a lot of the places when you're walking around, say like when you're walking on the ground, you're not really walking on soil on the ground. What you're walking on are years and years of trees and foliage and stuff, that trees that have fallen, and just stuff that is raw. So it's almost like it's kind of mushy,
Hmm.
for lack of a better word.
Right.
And it doesn't make tracks very well. So you can have big things go walking around in there and all day long, and they don't really leave much for tracks. So if you want to, in order to find tracks here, you almost have to go to places like lakes like the sides of lakes, or
Mud.
yeah, any place where you're going to find mud and stuff like that.
Right.
So but I mean, people find tracks, and I do find stuff. It's just the thing is it's not even I've found things like tracks in the sides of banks, like where the like hills have been cut through in order to make the roads, and you get the little bare bank there. I
Hmm.
mean, I find tracks in those. It's just that they don't leave tracks they're just not conducive for really clear tracks.
Right.
So you can always find stuff, and things have been moving through there, but it's really hard to find what they are.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, and I'll find stuff like that. And well, last year, I guess a little over a year ago, I was up there, and I had been up there. I had gone up. I think it was like must have been on a Friday, and I was with. I had spent the day with some other researchers from Sweet Home, Oregon, and I was setting up some game cams, and we hung out for a little bit, and then they took off and headed back down and headed back home. And I was decided to camp up there that weekend, and I was sitting there. I'd made camp, and I put the cams out and made camp. It must have been about maybe 7 in the evening, and I was sitting there in my tent, and I heard a tree fall. And I thought, well, that was kind of weird, because how often in your life are you ever there when a tree just falls?
Huh.
And I was texting this one gal that was in the group, and I was telling her, yeah, something weird just happened. Just a freaking tree just fell. I mean, I've only had that happen one time in my life, other than that, where I just happened to be around when a tree falls. But anyhow, it came from the tree fall came from right up the road where the camp was. See, this campsite that I was using a lot last year, there's like a little road that comes off of the main road, and that's so you can't actually see the main road from the campsite. You just see like a little driveway. It's like a driveway. And so I went to sleep, and I think it must have been about 1:30 in the morning. Something woke me up, and I don't know what it was, but something woke me up. And so I sat up for a little bit, and I thought, well, since I'm up now, I might as well work on videos. I always take my laptop with me. And so I was sitting there, and I worked for maybe about an hour until about 2:30. And then I heard something walking around my tent, or walking around in that camp area, because that campsite that I frequent, it's flat ground, but it always has a lot of dry needles on it. And it sounded like, and it didn't sound like hooves. And I always know the sound of hooves when I hear it at night. Because when I was a kid, we had cows, and I used to camp by myself down in our pasture. And in the morning, I could hear those cows walking around, because they would always come over, and I'd pop my head on my sleeping bag, and there'd be all these cows in a circle standing there looking at me. So I knew it wasn't hooves, but what it sounded like maybe somebody, like I kept thinking of a basketball player with no shoes on. That's what it sounded like. What that would sound like if somebody was just kind of walking around in the camp. And it would take a couple of steps, and then it would stop for a few seconds. And then I could hear it take a couple of other steps, and then it would stop for a few seconds. Almost like it was just taking a few steps and waiting. And I just kind of sat there, and I thought, well, shit, what do I do now?
Right.
And so I thought, well, I guess I'm just going to sit here. I'm just going to sit here and see what it does. And then I guess maybe after about a minute or so, I heard this sort of like a crackling sound. And I thought, God, what is that crackling sound? And then I knew what the crackling sound was. What it was is, I always put my tent on a tarp. I put on a plastic tarp to protect the tent from the ground. But I always end up with about 4 or 5 inches of tarp sticking out from under the tent. Whatever it was had just stepped on that tarp. So it was like right outside of my tent.
Oh no.
And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, now what do I do? You know what I mean?
I would have been terrified.
But I didn't. My tent has these little zipper windows. And of course, like an idiot, I had them all shut. But I kept thinking, well, what I should do is maybe I should open one of the zipper zipper windows and look out. But then I thought, well, if it's a squatch, if I open the zipper window, it might scare it off. And then I started thinking, well, but it could be something else. I mean, it could be, I don't know, it could be something. Then I started to remember that I left my plastic tubs out, that I have all the food in there. And I thought, well, so I kind of yelled at it. I made like, like when you yell at hissing sound you make when you're trying to get a cat to leave.
Yes. Yep.
And so I made this sound, and then I yelled something like, get out of here, or something. I don't even remember exactly what I said now, but then it got quiet, and I never heard it back. Finally had to pee. So I crawled out of my tent. There was nothing out there.
Oh, wow.
Anyhow, so that must have been about 2:30. Maybe it might have been more like maybe 3 o'clock by that time. And so I laid down, and I laid there for a long time, and eventually I fell asleep. And then it was about 6:40 in the morning. There was this huge crack sound. It was so loud that you know how when some clown wakes you up, like banging on something or something like that, and you know how you just kind of jump up and you're kind of shaking. Well, it was kind of like that. And I thought, what is going on out there? So I looked out. I didn't see anything, but I heard this really loud crack sound, and I thought, well, okay, well, I'm not getting sleep now. I might as well start packing up, because I was going to move camp that night, or that day anyhow. So I got camp packed up, and excuse me, I was just getting everything else packed into the truck. And this must have been about maybe 30 minutes later. And while I was packing, I kept hearing this cracking sound. It was like something breaking a limb in half. And it was all coming from right up the little driveway, right up the road that went to the camp. It was all coming from that same spot. It was the same spot where I heard that tree fall the night before. In this, I must have heard it about maybe three times, 2 or 3 times while I was packing up camp. And I thought, God, what is going on down there? So finally, I was happened to be standing right toward the front of my truck. And the very last thing I do when I pack up my camp is I have a camp carpet, a camp rug, and I put it on the hood of my truck, and I sweep all the needles and stuff off of it. And I was just sweeping that off. It's the last thing I do. And I start hearing that cracking sound, and I just looked down the road. I looked up the road, and I saw a big limb go flying across over the road. And hitting, of course, it landed right in the brush back there. And I thought, oh shit, great. So I decided that was a good time to get out of there, because I mean, the gist of it is the feeling that I got from this was something quite clearly did not want me in there.
Right.
Yeah. So I had gotten in the truck, and I just kind of crept really slow, which in that little drive, you have to drive slow in it because there's a bunch of sharp rocks in there. And I was really expecting I had my sidearm out, and I had put a round in the chamber, and I was expecting to get, like logs or limbs or something on my truck on my way out. But nothing happened. I got through there. I got out to the road. So I sat there for maybe half a minute because I wanted to check. I had a game cam that was nearby, and I wanted to check it before I left. And so I got out of the truck, and I'm walking down to check my game cam, and I heard that cracking sound again. But my game cam I had set up in a clearing. It was in a clear cut. And there's a little gated off road there you walk up. And I kept hearing that, but I kept hearing it in that tree line. What it was is it was following me.
Oh no.
So I decided, well, maybe the game cam's not really all that important. So I just left.
I would have left too, because I told you this before. There's only, you have to have hands to throw something.
Well,
Regular
yeah,
animals can't throw
exactly.
stuff. So that's either a human or a Bigfoot. So there's
Right.
that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, what else is it going to be? I mean, it's not going to be an elk or,
a bear.
it's not a bear. It's not, I mean, we have cougars up here, but I mean, cougars don't do that.
No, they can't throw stuff. So that really limits what that could have been throwing those across the road there.
Yeah, right.
So
So, I mean, I've been back there a lot of times since, but I haven't actually, I haven't actually camped there since then.
I don't blame you, because it was close enough to be stepping on your tarp for one.
Yeah,
I would have
that
freaked
was
out.
that was really creepy. That was when right about the time I figured out that was what that crinkling sound was. Is it was stepping on my tarp.
I would have been so done with that.
So,
Have you seen anything else weird while you were out there?
oh yeah, tons of weird stuff. Well, there was like that hiker that we were talking
Oh
about.
yeah, that's on your YouTube.
Yeah. Hmm.
So yeah, if anybody
That
wants to watch that video, it's at Steve Searches at YouTube, right?
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's Steve searches at YouTube, and there's if you fish through there, there's one that says "weird hiker" on the thumbnail. But yeah, that was just the I guess the basics of that was I was out there, and that was that same area. In fact, I was parked in that same campsite.
Yeah, I watched that. That was really weird.
Yeah, yeah. I just there was the hiker was coming up the trail. My GoPro started cutting out, and once I got done doing my GoPro, there was no hiker, and that was in January.
Right.
So a hiker even back in there, and that's a muddy area back in there. A hiker would have left tracks. It had snowed earlier that week, so there would have been tracks for sure. I went down there and I couldn't. I didn't find any tracks. I didn't find any sign of any hiker, and of course, up here when they see that road that goes up there, the main road, when it snows, they plow that road because that road goes up to a snow park, and people go up there snowmobile. So they always keep that road clear. But what happens is when they plow the roads, the plows it just plows the snow off to the side of the road, and it leaves like a bank of snow anywhere. So if somebody pulls off the road up there to park anywhere, you know it, because they have to drive through one of the little banks. And I drove up and down all up and down that road for probably a half an hour, and I didn't find any other vehicles or any place where anybody parked. I was clearly the only one up there.
That's so creepy,
Yeah, it was.
especially in
Yeah,
the woods.
yeah, it was pretty weird.
Mm. And
It
I
went.
told you about the guy I saw in the cemetery, but I would have been more creeped out seeing somebody in the woods
Yeah.
disappear. Ugh.
Yeah, well, in the weird, up in the when I go up, I have to be, I take a lot of precautions and stuff because I'm old and I'm fat and I'm by myself. So if I have a problem up there, it's really up to me to be able to mitigate it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And there's no cell service. I mean, all these places I go, there's no cell service, so it's not
Mm.
like you can just call 911 and
Right. That's
yeah,
that scares me, being where there's no cell service.
yeah, yeah.
You'd be lucky if you
So,
come across somebody and they can get a park ranger or whatever, or a game warden to come help you out in the wild like that. So
oh yeah. I mean, it would be if you get up there, like if a person is, especially up in like January and times like that, there's nobody else up there except for, there'd be a little bit of traffic on the road for people going to and from the snow parks, and that's really about it.
right.
But, I mean, nobody's going off the roads up there or anything like that.
Mm-mm.
And down in those areas, I mean, there's no snowmobiles go down there. They only go on on the regular roads up there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was in a place called Panther Creek. I was up there. I guess this must have been this is a couple of months ago now, maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks ago or something like that. I have this one on video too. But I was camped up in a spot where I had just bought this little thermal camera. It was one of the little cheap ones that you put on your iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
And I had gone up there and I was really just waiting for it to get dark because I was going to do a night operation up there. Basically just going out in the dark at night looking for weird stuff. And I'd sat in camp for a while. I was just waiting for it to get dark, and my little thermal unit, I had it plugged into my power station. It was sitting on the tailgate of my truck. And I'd noticed that it was done charging. So I had stood up and I walked over to check it out. And, sometimes you just pick stuff up and you just play with them,
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking through this thermal thing. I was looking through this thermal and I just looked at this tree. This tree was like maybe 20 feet from where I was sitting and where I was standing. And I noticed a hot spot down toward the trunk of the tree, right, or toward the bottom of the tree. And I thought, well, it must be a squirrel. And so I thought, oh, I'll just play with the squirrel a little bit and I'll have thermal going. And so I started walking toward it. And then it started to fade away, just like when a thermal signature, it's just like when you see these where people will take their hand on thermal to put on a wall, and they'll take their hand away and you can see the handprint, the
Mm-hmm.
thermal signature, but since it's cooling, you can just kind of watch it disappear. And this thing started disappearing. I thought it must have went around the tree. So I started walking around the tree, and right behind the tree, there was a big thermal spot. And it was probably about 2 feet long and maybe half that wide. It was right on the ground behind this tree. And so as I panned back, there were several of those going back into the woods.
Oh my gosh.
And so I thought, well, now that's pretty weird. And so as I was walking up toward it, I was just, you could just see it dissipate. So by the time I walked up, this is probably like maybe 10, 12 feet or something like that by this time. And by the time I got to it, it was mostly gone. So there was something behind that tree as I was sitting there.
Oh no.
I thought, oh, well, that's kind of disturbing because this tree wasn't 20 feet from where I was sitting.
Oh, I would have been freaked out. I would have ran out of there so fast.
Well,
Oh,
I thought, well, shoot, what? So I thought, well, gee, if something's that brazen to come up and just be right behind that tree, what's it going to do when I'm out hiking?
right. Most
So I
animals will
just,
run off from people,
yeah, and of course, where I'm at, there's no cell service or anything, and I thought, well, I don't know, and I thought, usually I usually don't build a fire when I go out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided, well, maybe I will build a fire for a little bit. So I had a fire for a little bit. And I had to soul search a little bit because I was almost at that point. I wasn't really that enthused about going out at night once it got dark. But I did anyhow. I was out for maybe about 3 hours. And I didn't really pick up much then when I was out there. But yeah, I have that on video too. That's in one of my videos.
I'm gonna go check that out. I'm all about Bigfoot and stuff, but I surely don't want to see one. I don't think I would recover from it if I saw one.
Well, it would be pretty shocking, I think, for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I agree.
I think for anybody it really would be.
Yeah.
because you're literally seeing something you've never actually seen before.
Yeah, that's not supposed to exist, but there's all kinds of evidence that they do. I mean, people's got hair, they've got DNA, they got tons and tons of footprints that have been, you know, validated saying they're real because they have, like fingerprint loops on them and such.
Right.
So, I mean, there's all kinds of evidence they're real.
Well, if you figured that all of the thousands and thousands of reports, it only really takes one to be to be true.
Right. Plus, the natives have been talking about them forever.
Right.
And I really believe them because somebody I know told me that's a native. They're like, they're not telling you this stuff to be telling you campfire stories. They're telling you this stuff for survival, basically. So,
Yeah, right.
so I truly believe what the natives say about them. So,
Oh, sure.
because
Well,
they
there's
had to
one.
live with them. They lived with them. They shared the woods with them.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, they were just. I mean, you look at some of the art. You look at some of their art, especially the old art.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they'll have coyotes and deer and Bigfoot and elk and moose
Mm-hmm.
all in their depictions.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely.
yeah, it's yeah, I don't know, for some reason it just seems like when I go out, I end up running into bizarre things like that. Mount St. Helens is the Gifford Pinchot is a really weird place.
Yeah, I've heard several stories coming up out of there. And that's what I told you when I talked to you earlier before we were recording. I I don't think people have to go look for Bigfoot. I think if you go camping, fishing, hiking, or hunting, they'll come find you eventually.
Oh, sure,
I feel like
sure.
they're big nosies and they want to see what you're doing. I feel like they're very curious. So I think if you just go out and mind your business, they'll find you. You don't have to go
Oh,
look for
yeah,
them.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah. In
well, I
fact, I
am.
was I was making a point in one of my videos about a month ago. Because I just turn the GoPro on a lot of times and I just yap and philosophize and stuff, and just basically like stuff you do when you're talking to yourself. Only
Hmm.
I'm talking to the GoPro. And I was talking about one time about how you can spend hours and hours and hours, like I do, of time, and spend thousands of dollars and go out and never really find anything, and then the next day somebody on their way on a fishing trip will they'll want to run right across the road in front of them.
Hmm.
That's a lot of times the way it works out.
Yes, it is. Most of the time, it's how it works out.
But the thing is I know for a fact if I don't go out, then I'm not going to see anything. I mean, I know that I got to at least put some effort into it. It's kind of like when I was a kid, my dad used to always say, you got to hunt where the ducks are, you know? So I just kind of look at it as it is, if I go out and I spend a weekend or a couple, 3 days, or even a few hours, and I go out into the woods, I don't ever come home empty-handed. I'm not disappointed, if I don't get something, if I don't get us that next Patterson Gimlin film or something like that, because it's really, for me, it's, I know it sounds kind of cliche to say it, but it is really about the journey. It's about the adventure.
Absolutely. I go out in the woods all the
It's
time.
just like, it's just like, yeah, I mean, if you go, if you go on a paranormal research, you go to a dark cemetery or something,
Hmm.
you're still not going to come home empty-handed, even if you don't see a bunch of apparitions or something like that.
Right. I know I am definitely not out looking for a Bigfoot, but I go out in the woods all the time because it's peaceful to me and it
Yeah.
recharges me and it resets my brain. And I love doing it. Now, if I'm out there hiking one time and I run into one, then I guess I run into one and be traumatized the rest of my life. But I never leave empty handed either because I always
Yeah.
see something way cool. I'll see it, a baby deer, or I can see a turtle, or, out in the middle of the road, out on the trail. I love nature and wildlife. So, yeah, I love it. But I'm
Oh, absolutely.
surely
Yeah.
not
It,
trying to see a Bigfoot.
it always gives you a story to tell.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just like when I leave these game cams out, most of the time I get them back, and when I go and I'll pull my cards, and there might be some stuff there, but if there's some deer there, or if there's some elk or something like that, I mean, I'm just as happy, really.
Me too. I love seeing wildlife in its little natural habitat. It just makes me happy. So,
Sure. Yeah.
have you ever seen any of those weird orb lights in the woods that people talk about?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've always been a photographer, and so I've gotten those in different places for years.
Okay. I just wondered if you'd ever seen any of those. And
Hmm.
Bigfoot, do you think they're like some undiscovered animal, or do you think they're more like a lost person, like an ancient person?
Well, I think that, and of course, I changed my mind about this, like I changed socks,
Hmm.
but that's because I ran into different things. And but I think, all in all, I think what they probably are is, I think that they're probably related to us. I think that they are a creature that probably evolved parallel to us, and not necessarily as the humans. I don't really I don't buy the ape stuff. I don't think that they're I don't think that they're really apes. I mean, I don't think they're really gorillas, because and the reason I say that is because I think that they're too intelligent. Because if I think if they were an ape, I think I would be able to walk out in the woods and see them out swinging around in the trees doing ape things.
Absolutely. Um,
And right,
I agree with you 100% on that. I do not believe that they're apes either.
right,
Mm-mm.
because they're just too smart.
Hmm.
I mean, in a lot of ways, they must be smarter than us. I mean, if we can't find them, I mean, if it's, I mean, not, well, I guess I should say we can't find them per se, but they seem to be pretty good at avoiding us.
Yeah, and they're surprisingly quiet for how big they are, sneaking up on people.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I mean, they 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 must be advanced in a lot of different ways.
I agree, but I'm not going to go into all that. But
Yeah,
did you
that's
want to?
all. That's another podcast,
No doubt that'd be a part 2 and a part 3 and a part 4,
right?
because it's so much stuff. It's just a lot, and
It is, yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, when I first, I mean, I've always believed in Bigfoot. It was always just a known thing for my brain that they existed, but um, for a long time, I really did think that they were an unknown primate. And
Hmm.
the more stuff you listen and the more patterns develop, the more you're like, that ain't no ape. That is not a primate, like an unknown primate ape. That is not what that is. So I don't
Right,
know. I don't know why they push that agenda so much, but I disagree with them. But to each their own. Everybody can have their own opinion, and I'm not judging anybody. But I don't think they're
right,
apes myself, and that's just
right.
my opinion. So,
Yeah.
did you want to add anything else?
Well, I guess not that I can think. I'll probably think of something after we hang up.
Yeah, and you want to tell your YouTube again? That way people can go check out your videos. Because
Oh yeah, it's my YouTube is basically, it's just Steve Searches.
yep,
It's
on YouTube.
so it's YouTube dot it's just your standard YouTube address,
Yeah,
youtube.com/@ Steve Searches.
yeah.
And then of course I have a Facebook page that is also Steve Searches.
Okay.
Those, as far as social media and stuff, that's pretty much what I use. I mean, I have an Instagram too, but I think I post on it maybe like twice a year
Yeah.
or something like that. But mostly because mostly what I do is based on shooting videos. I shoot videos of everything.
Okay.
So it ends up on YouTube. I might branch out a little bit to some other platforms, but right now it's mainly on YouTube.
Me too. I just have a Facebook page called Creepy Culture, and then I've got my YouTube. So, but I just started, so I'm just trying to get more stories. But I'm gonna go ahead and quit recording. But I really want to thank you again for coming on and sharing all your encounter stuff.
Oh, sure.
I really appreciate it. But I'm gonna turn this recorder off. Okay.
Okay.
Hold on one sec. Thank you, Steve, for sharing your encounters. If you've had any encounters that you would like to share, you can email me at creepyculture@yahoo.com, and I'll be happy to get with you and share it on my channel. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and I'll see you next weekend.